All right, guys, welcome back for the other episode of Cards and Coffee. It's been a minute. With me today, I got a special guest, Retrospecs. How's it going, man?
Good man, glad to be here. Been a fan for a minute. I like this podcast. I like the NSDC podcast. So yeah, man, it's cool to chop it up.
I appreciate it, man. Yeah, I've been a fan of yours. I think, or we've probably been a fan of each other, unbeknownst to each other, because I was early on looking at your Dragon Ball Z videos, and you were, showing where all your
Damn.
sources.
Okay.
Yeah,
Okay.
yeah. Hey,
That's
come on, dude.
crazy.
We dig out here. You know what I mean?
All
We
right.
we do
All
our
right.
research.
That's
So
crazy, man. That's a deep cut for sure. I appreciate that, man. I put a lot of work into those videos, so I'm glad somebody appreciated that.
yeah, man, that's definitely a master class you put on for that, and there's a lot of things that I learned from that I didn't know. Yeah, and recently I checked out, shout out to your channel. Again, it's Retrospecs. I watched your recent rant on the whole Japanese market,
Yeah, I
and
got a little heated, but
you did. I was like, man, who got you mad at? What's going on? What they do to you? They put their hands on you? What's going on?
I know. I gotta chill out a little bit. Sometimes I just like, just go a little crazy. But yeah, I don't know. Like sometimes I feel like people hold double standards a little bit, and I probably got a little emotional too, just because I love Japanese, so it's I had to defend my side a little bit. But
No, it was cool, man. I wanted to get started with how'd you get into collecting? Because I'm assuming you were once a collector before you even decided to sell anything.
yeah, no, for sure. I mean, when I first got back into the hobby, it was like 100% just collecting, and to be honest, what really interested me was just going down rabbit holes, learning about like niche stuff, because obviously you have all the big YouTubers talking about like the modern hype stuff or whatever, but where a lot of the coolest cards are is down a rabbit hole. So finding people like you guys and Swami early on. Sort of turned me on to like the whole non-sport world and the rarity and Marvel cards and stuff like that. And I was, as a kid, I mean, I don't know if this is just a generational thing or what, but as a kid, like I was probably one of my only friends that was super into comics and super into graphic novels and stuff like that. So, learning about like that there was this whole Marvel card world, and there was this crazy art and like unique art that they didn't even have in the comic books, and serialization and inserts and all that stuff. I mean, like going down that rabbit hole and learning all that stuff. I mean, that to me was some of the funnest stuff. And yeah, I mean that's where I get the most enjoyment out of the hobby for sure, is finding something with crazy art that's got like good rarity, hard to obtain, and then sort of like conditional rarity, like chasing the best condition copy of
Mm.
whatever card it is. That for me, that's what gets me going for sure.
And when you got back into the hobby, man, like, did you have any goals for yourself? Like, to give you an example, when I got back in and started picking up Pokemon cards, what I wanted it to attain was all the first couple WotC sets and the hollows in PSA 9. That was my goal. Did you have any goals at all for Pokemon, and did you meet them before you started selling, or how'd that work out?
I was a little all over the place, to be honest, and maybe that's part of the reason I burnt out a little bit. But initially, it was kind of like I was super into the gym sets, so kind of like trying to collect the gym stuff, and then Versus series, which is like a Japanese like Johto generation, but it's Japanese exclusive. I wanted to like completely put together the Versus series and stuff like that, but uh, when I got into Marvel, I'm a huge like Deadpool fan. It's probably like my favorite guy for sure. And so I was like going after mainly like Deadpool and Venom cards, but those get pricey, as you know, and so it was kind of tough. And so I really only had like a few nice cards that I like with cool arts, and then I ended up having like the PMGs and stuff. But yeah, it was tough because like going from Pokemon to Marvel, like some of that stuff was pretty pricey, especially for those kinds of characters, right? Like it's not exactly like a lot of people pay a lot of money for Venom and Deadpool. So I was like, man, I can't be out here dishing out like $2,000 for stuff. You know what I mean?
Yeah, yeah. And when you started getting into Marvel, like how, and this is something I always ask people that sell, like, how did you decide what you were going to still keep as PC versus what you were okay letting go? How did you make that, like, distinction?
Well, initially, like I bought the the bronze Venom and the bronze Deadpool because I like those arts are crazy. And even still to this day, that 2017 Fleer Ultra Spider-Man Venom art and the Deadpool, honestly, like those are some of my favorite arts of those two characters on Marvel cards. So I held on to those for a long time. But on the other side of it, like as far as flipping goes, I was buying a bunch of PMGs, but the idea with those was like, okay, I'll wait for these to appreciate and then flip them into the market, and then I'll keep this stuff over here. I was really into like a lot of the Jusco art. Like I really like the Jusco, like the 93 masterpieces. So I was like the Doctor Strange is crazy, like the tarot card. I really like the Carnage from that set. So I had that in a PSA 10, and then I had the Gambit and the Deadpool where it's got like the crosshairs on the moon or whatever. So I was holding on to the stuff that I just really like connected with the art. You know, like I really connected with that 90s sort of gritty, maybe like a little bit hip hop style. So like Jusco and McFarlane are probably the two artists that really stuck out to me. So that's the stuff that I kind of held on to for the longest. And the other stuff was more just like, yeah, I'll flip this or whatever and make some money on it. But the stuff that I really connected to that reminded me of like what comics and graphic novels looked like when I was a kid, that's the stuff that I held on to for the longest for sure.
And up to now, I don't know how long you've been collecting in general, years wise, but is there something that you've kept all this time throughout your whole journey collecting? Is there, and if so, like whether it's been something that you've only been holding for 3 years, 5 years, but is there something in your PC now that, for whatever reason, has stayed and you haven't, been able to let it go?
Well, so like I mean this comic up here, this is a signed Deadpool comic. It's called the series is called like the Circle Chase, and that's like the first, and it's signed and numbered and all that stuff. And I've had that since I was a kid. So I've been thinking
Mm,
about like liquidating some of my comic collection, but that stuff is gonna stay with me for sure. But as far as cards go, like I like this stuff a lot, like the DBZ
mm.
Bandai. So like this will never. I actually sold this when I graded it, and like a month later, I was like, "Yo, can I get that back? Like, I'll trade you some other stuff or buy that back because it's just like my favorite art." So collecting like a lot of the vintage Dragon Ball Z shit in higher grade that's difficult to grade in high grade like that's kind of a chase for me, and that kind of stuff I don't really want to let go of. I'll still sell some of it, but the arts that I really connect with in the high grades, yeah, I don't know. I hold on to them. I really like that, and it's stuff that I can't replace. Like stuff that I know I can
Mm,
get back later. Like even some of the rare stuff in Pokemon, it's like yeah, it might be more expensive in the future or whatever, but I can get it back. Stuff like this, I can't get back. You know what I mean? It's very difficult to grade it in that grade to begin with, and once I sell it to somebody, the kind of people buying it are like forever collectors. Like once that,
yeah,
I mean, you're probably familiar with that in Marvel. Like once a big card goes, it's gone, and there's no
yeah.
other option. You might be waiting years for that card to pop back up on the market. So I'm just not trying to play that game. You know what I'm saying?
Mm.
Like I don't want to take that risk at all.
Yeah, yeah, for me on the Pokemon side, one of the only cards I regret moving was Grand Party PSA 10, or excuse me, PSA 9. I had a PSA 9. I love the font, the three legendary birds, the Japanese style, and it wasn't a clean 9. It just had like a little print line through the hollow. So I felt like if I ever would have sent that to BGS, I might have been able to cross it to a 9.5 and got the gold on gold. But
Yeah,
on the
that's a
on
sick
the
card.
on the Marvel side, to your point, I recently had to let go of a Carnage 75th Gold Border. I sold it within an hour of me posting it. It just snap bought. No one, no, haggling. They just paid the full price. So it goes back to what you're saying. There's stuff that it's going to be hard to replace. So for me, that's what I try to keep as well. Like things that are hard to come by. And the thing is that it just depends, right? Like not only are they hard to come by, because there's stuff that's hard to come by, mind you, that's like $20 cards right now with Marvel. Just people don't know. Like before we started recording, you were talking about the gold bullion achievement cards from X-Men Metal, uh, and people don't know what goes into just getting one of those, or even the 2017 Fleer Ultra Spider-Man. The rainbows, the web rainbows. Those are
Yeah.
crazy.
And the patterns too, honestly, like it's so
Mm,
funny to me that people like undervalue those patterns, but those hit in hand to me. Like I really like that sort of like rainbowy hollow foil background to the pattern PMGs. They're not numbered, and I think that's why a lot of people, but they're still rare and difficult to get, especially with E-Pack. A lot of people in Marvel don't even know what E-Pack is still, so yeah, man, like you said, like some of the very hard to get stuff is still cheap just because people don't have the knowledge on it.
Yeah. Now, last question on the Pokemon side. When you first got into Pokemon, did you listen to people like SM Pratt, or who were you listening to early on? The reason I ask about that is, well, he has a saying, and I don't know if you agree with it, and if there's any caveats to this, right? But you might know it: the rarer, the older, the minter, the better. Do you believe that to be true, or what changes, or what would you insert in there that maybe is missing for you?
I think if it's the right item, that kind of stuff applies, but just as sort of like a general statement, I don't necessarily think it applies, because I mean there's a lot of stuff that's old and rare that, and especially in Pokemon, like the WotC stuff especially has done the worst, over the
Mm.
past few years as far as like investment value goes, whereas like modern stuff has just continued to truck. And I think to like real deep collectors that are really into just collecting for the long term and getting the niche stuff, those kind of people are into the kind of stuff that SM Pride is into, right? Like the trophy
Mm.
cards, the rare Japanese promos, all that kind of stuff that you have to dig to get into. But like the average consumer is buying modern, right? It's the same thing as like underground rap versus mainstream rap. Like everybody knows Drake. Everybody knows Drake's catalog. People
Mm.
might not know Nas's catalog. You know what I'm saying? So it's the same sort of thing. But like real heads respect Nas, right? So that's how I kind of feel about it with cards is price appreciation. Like if you're just thinking about price appreciation wise, like it's been kind of rough on a lot of the vintage stuff. But like certain things that have good fundamentals and they're old and hard to grade have done well, right? Like CD promo Charizard, super classic art, right? Sugimori art, famous art from the Game Boy game, so super nostalgic to everybody that ever played Pokemon Red
Mm.
as a kid. There's a lot of those cards graded, but the CD promo that it comes in has gone up in value, is more expensive to open now, and the Charizard is like doubled in price over the past couple of years, right? So in some cases, and then obviously with the trophy cards, like the stuff Logan Paul's buying, all that kind of stuff has definitely been popping off for sure. So I think in the long term, over a long enough time frame, the people with big money, big pockets, the people that are more selective about their collection are always going to go for those kinds of cards generally. But the mass market is probably, similar to sports, similar to Marvel. It's the same thing. A new set comes out, that's what people are hyped up on. They're not necessarily doing the work and digging to find where the good value is. You know what I mean?
Yeah, and on that note, when you're talking about like high-end buyers, you as a seller, and I'm sure you have enough data just based on your sales volumes with eBay, but what do you think as far as price brackets take the biggest hit on a down market? Do you think it's cards that are like $1 to $100 cards, or is it like $100 to $500 cards, or is it the $1,000 and up cards? What takes the biggest hit that you've seen?
That's a good question. I think more so than price brackets, it's like rarity. Like we were talking a little bit before the call about how people were going crazy buying base prisms of different rookies and stuff like that. But then when those get graded into the ground, the prices take a crazy hit. That's how I kind of feel when down markets show up, is like if there's a lot of something out there and it's really easy for people to replace, people are quick to get rid of it. Whereas the
Mm.
stuff that's difficult to replace, they're like, I'm going to sell all this other stuff before I have to sell my grail piece. But generally too, I mean, again, there's people buying cars that they got no business buying and overspending and things like that. But generally, people that have nice cards, the more expensive stuff, the more niche stuff, they probably have a little more money, or at least enough money to hold on to the stuff that's like rare and more valuable. So in my experience, like that's the kind of stuff that tends to hold up a little bit better. And I mean, that kind of reflects too, if you look at like PWCC has a chart, and it's called like the PWCC 500, right? And it's basically like the S&P, but it's like the top 500 sports cards. But then they have the PWCC 100. And when you see the charts overlaid on each other, the PWCC 100 has outperformed the 500. And so like the top 100 cards have outperformed the top 500 cards. So like the best of the best seems to do better across multiple hobbies and seems to hold up better, right? And again, maybe that's just because the people that are looking for those cards have the money to be able to like hold through a down market. I'm not entirely sure, but that's just what I've seen. Is that similar to what you've seen too? Or?
Yeah, yeah. I think I've seen the similar thing. I think the biggest hits that I see, at least in Marvel, which is a slightly younger market, is probably like the $100 to $500 range that took the biggest hit, because a lot of those cards went down where a lot of people, like PSA 10s is a good example. Base cards, whether it was 92 masterpieces or any of the 90s set, which you want to go for condition rarity with those sets because they're not serial numbered, right? You would see that those were consistently doing between 2 to 350, right, depending on the character and the pop report on those 10s. Where now people are trying to get 10s between $60 and $150. So that got cut like by 60%, somewhere in that range. A question for you as well. Like, again, you do this full time at the moment. Like, what order would you say you're in? Like, are you a collector first, a dealer first, an investor first? And like, what's the order for those three for you? Like, collector, investor, dealer.
Definitely dealer first. Investor, collector. It's tough to me too, because like when I think about something I collect, like a lot of it is just sentimental value, like the Dragon Ball stuff or whatever. I don't necessarily know if that's going to go up in value over time. I've seen the sealed product, like those sealed Cardos boxes. Like I can't find those anymore. I've actually been selling off a lot of my boxes on eBay and stuff, but I can't find those anymore. Like I used to buy a ton of those from Japan and they were fairly available, and I can't find them anymore. Now, I don't know if that means that they're going to go up in value, if the cards are going to go up in value in the future, or anything like that. But when I think about collecting, because I'm so finance brained, I kind of mash the two up. Like if I'm going to collect, I want to collect something that's going to hold its value. So I would say like collecting and investing are kind of right on the same bar with each other, just because again, if it's cheap or whatever, like I don't, whatever, if it's 20, $50, like if it drops 30%, who cares, right? But if it's like $500 to $1,000, like I want to make sure that that's going to hold its value. You know what I mean? I like it. I might genuinely like it myself, but I also don't want to lose like $400. You know what I'm saying? So I would say that those kind of coexist a little bit.
And currently now, when you're selling, like, how, because for your business, how do you allocate? For example, let's say you're making 10 or 20K in sales volume. How do you allocate? Like, all right, I'm gonna invest another 5 grand of that same of the profit, or I'm gonna hold off. Like, how do you work that side of the business for yourself? Like, what percentage of your sales go back into inventory, into buying inventory or sourcing?
I used to buy like more consistently, and now I like to go heavy when there's like good opportunity. Like rather than consistently just buy and try to force stuff, I wait until like there's good deals, or like right now, buying from Japan is good because the yen is super weak against the dollar, right? So there's kind of like currency arbitrage to be had there. But when a good deal pops up, I want to be liquid. So I try not to just like consistently buy and force stuff. I wait until something really good happens or it's a good time to be buying, and I'll go super heavy. As far as investing goes, certain like lately, I've kind of been taking a little more risk because I see right now it is a bit of a down market, but I see things that I'm like, I know how hard this card is to find raw. I know how hard this is to grade in a PSA 10. If I think it's a good price, I'll just snap it. You know what I mean? And that's definitely more risky than buying stuff and then grading it. But there's certain things where I'm like, nah, man. And I'll watch too. Like, maybe I won't immediately snap something. I'll put something in my cart, and then I'll come back a day later and it's gone. And that kind of reminds me like, okay, somebody out there saw the same thing that I did and was like, this is way too cheap. I'm buying this instantly. And so that gives me confidence, right? Like if that stuff sat, if I already thought it was cheap and then it sat for weeks and weeks and weeks, that would concern me. But that's not really what I've been seeing. Good cards priced really cheap because people just need the money or whatever. That stuff gets bought up pretty quickly, especially if it's popular characters or popular Pokemon or whatever. Like people will figure out a way to get the money to take those cards off the market is at least what I've been seeing.
Yeah, another thing I've noticed, like one recurring theme throughout a lot of your conversations and or videos is like you talk a lot about data, right? Like you like analytics, you like charts, all that good stuff. How much do you think of your decision making into either investing or buying cards is based on that numbers versus intuition and your gut?
I would say like more of it is probably the gut for sure, but like I want the data to back it up because a lot of it is subjectivity, right? Like you can
Mm,
come in, like if you came into Marvel cards and knew nothing about the MCU at all, like you would get crushed. You know what I'm saying? You might think that like, oh, this card is super rare and has better fundamentals than this card, but it's like, yo, no one cares about that character. You know what I'm saying? Or like understanding certain niches and certain inserts that people want and why people value this over that or whatever, like that subjectivity is important, and that's why arbitrage exists in collectibles markets, is because there's that subjectivity to it, right? Like this is not an optimized market like the stock market, you know, or the bond market or whatever. There is a layer of subjectivity, and you can hit a lick because you have the knowledge. Like someone might undervalue something or not know what something's worth based on face value, but you knowing the knowledge or knowing like, oh, I know buyers are out here looking for this card, or maybe before it was cheap, but now a lot of people are looking for this because there's not a lot on the market. So the subjectivity definitely plays into it. I mean, when a new set comes out in Pokemon, for instance, like the first thing I'm looking at is like what are the chase cards? Are they popular Pokemon and do they have good art?
yeah.
So that is like 100% subjectivity. That has nothing to do with data, right? So um, yeah, I would say a lot of it is intuition for sure. And to be honest, like I don't want to big myself up or whatever, but like when you're grading a lot of this niche stuff, more than like using the data, you're kind of being like an art curator a little bit.
100%.
Like you think something is fire and you're like, I know somebody else out there will think this is fire too. I'm gonna try to get this in as high a grade as possible and see if people are interested. And that's fun, right? Like that to
Mm,
me is, and it's reaffirming too when you think something's cool, you put it out there and the
mhm.
market responds by saying like, yeah, that is cool, you know? So yeah, I enjoy that part of it for sure.
Yeah. Now, based on how long you've been doing this now, do you think, going back to the example you gave me of the PWCC Top 100, do you think you now have enough, amassed enough knowledge to put together a Marvel's Top 100? And do you think, and if so, do you think it would take or excuse me, stand the test of times in 10 years out? It'd be good to see where your Top 100 is at compared to, today.
I mean, I think guys like you and Melfi and Swami know a lot more about the Marvel market and specifically what's been happening recently than I do. But I'd like to think that if I, was given X amount of money and it was like, yo, okay, buy 100 cars or whatever, I'd like to think I could buy the good stuff. But again, a lot of that too is understanding like no one was talking about holograms, right?
Mhm.
And then holograms went absolutely nuts. And maybe some of that was because Swami was talking about that and showing, full sets of the inserts on his videos. And people sort of saw that, realized they were rare, realized they were cool arts, hard to get sets, and went after them. I'm not entirely sure what happened with that, but a lot of that stuff is kind of like trend driven a little bit. And I think that's because like the hobby's a little bit smaller, that people are more impacted by things like that.
Mhm.
um, so it's tough to know, but like there's a lot of stuff I think is undervalued. I don't know if it'll appreciate in the future. Another thing that's tough with Marvel too is people are a little more hostile. Not everybody, but people are a little more hostile towards grading. But to
Mhm.
me, Marvel cards in high grade should hold a crazy premium because Marvel cards are tougher to grade than Pokemon cards. So if you're
Yeah.
getting PSA 9s, PSA 10s, BGS 9.5s, things like that on Marvel cards, especially from some of these older sets, and especially the cards with like a thicker stock, or a card like a PMG where like in 2017 it's known that there's chipping on the nameplates and stuff like that. Like that kind of stuff to me holds value. Now, is the market going to agree with that? I don't know. And again, like a lot of people, you go in the Facebook groups, things like that, people might be like hostile towards grading, but to me, that conditional rarity of those, especially if they're numbered and stuff like that should hold value, in my opinion. I don't know if the market will agree with me though. Like we'll see. We'll see.
Yeah, I personally been into, like, to your point, the Japanese card as prism cards. Especially Dragon Ball Z for sure. Like I grew up on Dragon Ball Z. That's my thing. That's my thing even before Marvel. I usually keep that on the low because as you may also know with Marvel, people love to know what characters you collect so they can hold them over your head if you ever, if you need something that they have and you don't. But yeah, the funny thing about that is again, for me, it's Dragon Ball first, then Marvel. Why do you think that niche market hasn't taken off more? Uh, I personally, obviously PC it. I don't buy any of it to flip personally, but that's how it started. Even with Pokemon, right? Like I never had the intention to flip to begin with. I just intended to buy dope shit that I like.
I think that just not a lot of people know about it. I mean, to be honest, I was at a card show 2 weekends ago, and I have some of that DBZ stuff in a binder. It's mostly Pokemon and stuff. But if people flip their way to the back, they'll find like some DBZ prisms. And this one dude came up and he flipped through it and he got to the DBZ cards and he was like, "Oh man, you have Dragon Ball Visual Adventure. Like I love these cards." And I was like, "What? Like how do you even know what this stuff is, man? Because it's so niche." And I remember when I made those videos. I mean, my channel was small to begin with, but I think they only got like a couple hundred views to begin with, and I'm sure some of that was like my homies and stuff like that. But it's niche and it's tough to find information on. I mean, for me to put that video
Mm.
together, dude, I was talking to dudes in France and Spain and
Yeah.
Brazil and translating like Facebook messages and stuff because I could like the information for this stuff was just not out there and it takes work to get into. But that's also to me why it's like it's more worth it and it feels better. I love the art, I love the rarity. They're super tough to grade, but
Yep.
like it's tough to even get to the point to where you can understand how valuable they are. Whereas something like modern sports or a modern Marvel set or modern Pokemon, it's really easy for people to understand. Oh, this is the toughest to pull card. This is the best character in the set. That's why it has value. Whereas you have to really do some work and really care about it to get to the point to where you understand why the DBZ Cardos stuff has value. You know what I mean?
Yeah, I think what I've noticed through our conversation is like a reoccurring theme is that there's a lot of surface collectors, right? There's a lot of people that, oh, they see so and so's into collecting, so they just jump in, maybe either buy a box to break or maybe buy a slab or two, but they don't really do their research or dig or try to do anything. I find a similar like comparison to the Japanese market to like foreign comics, right? Like foreign comics are super like, depending obviously on what covers you're referring to, but they're super rare, very hard to find. Same things that you came across, right? You have to talk to people from other countries and try to piece things together, and it's dope. But when you do your research, like I'll reveal this on another episode myself, but I recently acquired a Golden Age comic that's in Spanish, right? It's a Mexican comic. It was a grail for me. And when you look at the pop report on the US version and what those, copies are doing money wise, it's like a no-brainer. Like again, but again, unless you're doing that kind of research, you're never going to figure that out. And another thing too is like you the further it's kind of like the filters on eBay, right? Like the more filters you are on, the smaller and smaller your search is gonna come. So I feel that's the same way with buyers, right? Like the more niche you get into, the least the buyer pool is gonna be. But long term, I feel that that's what should be like the Pikachu illustrators, if you will. You know what I mean?
Yeah, well, and I mean, like that's part of the reason that I really enjoy watching you guys' stuff is because you do the work. You know what I mean? And like to your point about the foreign comics, like I didn't even. I mean, it makes sense when you think about it. Like, of course, comics were printed in other languages, but until I started watching you guys' stuff, I didn't even like think about that. And then like you guys breaking down how there's slightly different color variations on the foreign stuff and they might be like an entirely different cover to begin with and all that, like that is dope. Like that kind of stuff really appeals to collectors that are gonna go below that surface level. Like I'm not even like I got a small comic collection, but I'm not actively buying comics or anything like that, and I'm interested in that. So I know people
Mm.
that are heavy into comics, if they find their way down the right rabbit holes, are going to be like, oh snap, like this is a separate colorway or a completely alternate cover of the same issue. This art maybe is even cooler than the original, and it's tougher to get, in good condition. Like I think that the people with the money, the people that are going to be here for a long time, eventually are going to find their way down those rabbit holes, and that kind of stuff is probably going to hold out. I mean, you had Manu on, and what do they call, like, the Wizard comics, or what do they
Yeah,
call it? Yeah,
yeah,
like,
the Wizard magazine.
yeah, I've never seen those in my life, but the art is sick. And so, like, I
Yeah.
understand why, like, people are into that. And I don't understand the difference between, like, a newsstand version and that version and all that stuff or whatever. But, like, I can understand just by looking at it, like, okay, this is a play, right? Like, it's Spidey in a
Mhm.
different outfit, or whatever, and it's got the rarity and the conditional rarity attached to it. Like, I can understand why whales are going after that kind of stuff for sure.
Yeah, but even when it comes to whales, man, and people with money, what I've noticed as well is that not all of them have the common denominator of actually like loving what they're collecting, right? Or have a great passion for it, because that's what gets you to put in 10 hours of looking on eBay or scouring the internet for and going on a lead about a fucking photo from 10 years ago, and that's all you know. Who does that, right? Unless you really enjoy it, you're not going to put that work in. And I think that's what stops even the people with the money. So what they end up doing is, again, they'll go on YouTube and see what the content creators are collecting, and they try to use that as their guideline as opposed to them themselves researching. Yeah, I had another point, but go ahead. I think, were you going to say something?
No, I mean, I definitely, that's happened in multiple markets, especially with everything that happened with the pandemic and stuff. A lot of it too was like people with money wanted exposure to collectibles, but they would ask other people what to buy. They would say like, "Yo, I have money. I want to buy some sports cards. I want to buy some Pokemon. I want to buy some Marvel. What do I buy?" And then they let other people tell them, whether they're content creators or whatever, they let other people tell them like, this is the biggest card, or this card should be the most valuable because of XYZ, right? And so that kind of goes to your point of these people might have money, but they're not necessarily doing the work, right? Like there's definitely fewer people that both have the money and are also willing to put the work in to find the truly rare stuff. So that's unfortunate. And it's kind of interesting to me. Like, if I was going to be dropping like some serious money, I'd like to understand what I was buying, right? So, but I'm also not a billionaire, so it is what it is, I guess.
Yeah, yeah. Another thing I was going to ask you on the different markets and non-sports, where do you see like the current, I would say, maybe top five biggest names out there? You got Pokemon, Yu-Gi-Oh, Magic the Gathering, Marvel, or Kana, and let's say like a Japanese market on its own from like even more and more niche stuff, right? Which one do you see having more growth in the next 5 years? Right? Like obviously Pokemon's established, but so maybe if you want to focus on like the other ones, Yu-Gi-Oh, Magic the Gathering, Marvel, or Kana, or Japanese market.
I think, well, I guess like to go two different ways with it. One, I think the Japanese market. So a big issue, especially when I was doing like a lot of the early Cardos stuff, like I had to send set lists and information to PSA and BGS to even get them to grade certain cards because they didn't know where to find the information on the cards, and so they wouldn't grade stuff. Now that PSA has an office open in Japan, that niche stuff is going to get graded by Japanese people who have that information and have like, firsthand experience with these cards. So I actually think that a lot of that niche stuff could blow up. And if you follow PSA, their Japanese Instagram, they
Yeah.
have been posting some niche stuff that I haven't even seen before, which is cool to see, right? Like I appreciate that. So I actually think that could experience some growth, for sure. But outside of that, honestly, man, like like Disney is just so massive and it appeals to multiple demographics similar to the way that Pokemon does, that I think like if Lorcana doesn't go crazy and overprint their stuff, I think that game could be pretty strong here in the future. Magic, I don't really see popping off because it's not attached to an IP. And the thing that worries me about Yu-Gi-Oh is they haven't really done anything new with like a show or anything like that. And the creator Takahashi passed away. So it's kind of tough, right? Like Pokemon is made up by so many artists, so many people. There's not like one person that's responsible for the IP. Whereas with Yu-Gi-Oh, Takahashi is like
Mm.
that's his baby. You know what I'm saying? So like I don't really know how it's gonna pan out moving forward with just Konami sort of like holding the reins. And then with Marvel, like I would like to see Marvel, but I think I think the MCU movie wise is kind of like falling off a little bit in popularity. I mean, they dominated the box office for 10, 15 years. And now I think the last few movies that have come out have just been kind of like subpar. But, you know, they got stuff like people really like Loki and some of the shows they put on Disney Plus and stuff like that. So I don't think it's going anywhere. I just don't necessarily think it's going to explode in like the next, you know, couple of years or anything like that. What do you think?
Yeah, I think personally, and I'm obviously biased in both of these, but I think that the Japanese market and the Marvel market are probably going to grow as well as the Star Wars market. You know, because they're tied up with that same IP, and Disney just is lucky enough to own all of it. But the Lorcana, I don't know, man. I feel like personally, uh, when something is modern and overprinted, it's like a repellent for me. I don't like it. It's overprinted and it's modern. What am like? I keep and one game that I wanted to play with you towards the end is, you know, I believe Swami has done this before, and you might have been a part of it. I can't recall, but if I show you three different cards from these three different categories, which one would you buy? Right?
Yeah, top
And
spec,
I
top
wouldn't.
spec. I love
Yeah, and I would never buy Lorcana in any of those situations. Just being honest, you know. So I think it's going to be Japanese and Marvel that grows the most. The one question I did have about Japanese market is, what is your experience? You know, for example, with yeah, on eBay regularly, when someone lists any type of card, whether it be Pokemon or Marvel, everybody loves the near mint PSA 10 question mark, right? Do you feel that Japanese sellers in general, and I know we're generalizing here, but do you feel that they're more accurate with their condition listing, or like listing the condition, or is the US market more accurate?
That's an interesting question. I would say in general, because Japanese people just they take more pride in things, and cleanliness and sort of organization is really really prized in that culture. In general, Japanese and like the card, at least with Pokemon, like Japanese Pokemon cards, people take better care of their stuff, but it's also like printed better quality to begin with than its English counterpart. But I would definitely say that Japanese stuff is in slightly better condition. But like stuff with the Cardos, for instance, I've opened tons of boxes where I've graded eights fresh out of box. You know what I'm saying? So there's certain things like it's kind of like some of your older, you know, Marvel or sports sets, right? Where like they brick, right? Because of the sort of like glossy finish on the top of the cards. And so it's a gamble. Like you can get a sealed box that's in pristine condition, but you open it and the cards are bricked. It's the same thing with some of this rare Japanese stuff, especially the Cardos, because these cards were not really meant for people to like sleeve and put in one touches and stuff like that. These cards were getting loaded into vending machines and they were sold for 20 yen. You know what I'm saying? Like basically 5 cents, and they were getting shot out of vending machines. So the surfaces are scuffed up, the sides and the
Mhm.
corners are all torn up and stuff like that. And one thing I've noticed with the prisms, I don't know what it is. It's got to be some chemical or whatever, but over time the prism will sort of like get a cloudiness to it and degrade a little bit, even if it's kept in perfect condition, like sealed in a box. And I think that's just the chemicals that were used to make the finish of the card are like wearing down over time. So if you can find a vintage, like Melfi the other day posted, he got a card from Doom, and it was a Cardos X-Men card. And I mean, Melfi does really good with the pictures, but the surface of the prism looks super clean. And I was like, damn, man, like that looks crispy. Like when you find stuff like that, that's the kind of stuff to me. It's like that's I'm not selling that, because
Yeah.
even if you find a sealed box, you might never find something with that clean of a surface or corners or edges ever again. You know what I mean? So
Yeah, and to your Cardass Dragon Ball Z thing, when you open those boxes, what do you do personally before you send them in? Like you're as far as prepping for grading, do you know that sometimes in the little corners they have like that fuzziness? Do you cut that off? What do you do about that
I
personally?
don't cut it. What I'll do is I'll kind of like I'll run my finger like around the edge, and sometimes it'll sort of like adhere to the card a little bit or sort of even out a little bit. I try not to cut stuff. A long time ago, another thing that those Cardos cards, it's just the way they're cut or something. But in the corner, there'll be like an extra little piece of card, like an extra.
Mhm.
It's like not a perfectly rounded corner. It's got like an extra little piece of card on it, and I took some like non-prisms back in the day, and I was like, okay, should I try to cut this off or like get it? And it's just the way the cards are cut. You know what I'm saying? It's just a production issue. But it's to the fuzziness point. I totally get what you're saying. I don't personally cut it. I just run my finger around the edge to where it looks clean, and then I immediately like will sleeve it and put it in a card saver and hope for the best. And that's worked out. That's worked out pretty decent. But it's that provides that extra level of chase, right? Like finding the finding like the super clean version. It's tough, man, because that the print quality on that stuff was rough. So
Nice. Yeah. I was gonna ask you, man. While we're still on Dragon Ball Z, before we move on, do you mind sharing with us your top 3 cards from your DBZ collection that you currently have?
yeah, okay. I mean, one of them I might have to go get, but this one for sure. This is like my ultimate grail. I just love this art specifically, like Kid Goku sitting on the Nimbus looking at Shenron, and to get it in a 9.5. I mean, this is my favorite visual adventure art for sure. But that one,
That's
and then
great.
I got
Is that a true gem, by the way? Is that all 9.5s, or what do you got?
the Surface got a 9. The Surface got a
Okay.
9, but the other ones are all 9.5. So that's kind of how it goes. Same thing with this one, all 9.5s except for Surface.
Oh, that one's dope. Yeah, I
Yeah,
like
I
that one.
love that one. And then I guess another cool one. Oh, I actually bought. Well, these two are tied. So, but I actually bought this on eBay or Instagram from a
Oh,
dude,
nice.
and this is a 9, and I really like that art. And then this one, another
Oh,
same.
yeah, that's classic. Yeah.
Yeah, just classic stuff, man. So like stuff like that, I think it should be more valuable, but like I don't have a problem with buying it and holding on to it, because I just personally enjoy it myself. And especially like the one I bought, I think I got it for like $150 or something, and like to find that card raw mint is probably like 70-80 bucks as is, and then like trying to get it in a 9, I'm just like, I'll just buy it, you know what I mean? At
Yeah.
that point, like I'll just buy it for $150. It was a clean copy. So um those just hit to me, man. Like Dragon Ball Z, like kind of to what you were saying, like that's actually my number one. Like I deal mainly in Pokemon, but like DBZ is for sure like the thing. Like when Akira Toriyama died, like that jacked me up, man. And I'm not one of those people that's like, oh, when a celebrity dies, I'm on Facebook and Instagram, like, oh, you know what I'm saying? Like,
Yeah.
I'm not that kind of guy, but I like DBZ, Dragon Ball DBZ. I don't know, like it's something I've loved for my entire life, and yeah, it was just tough to me to hear that might be like coming to an end. And I'm not like a big autograph collector either, but Akira Toriyama was like an autograph that I really
Yeah.
wanted to get, and so now I feel like those are maybe a little bit out of reach.
Yeah.
You know what I'm saying? So that's kind of a bummer. But I might make a video. I bought this. This is called like the World of Akira Toriyama. It's like a book that's got a bunch of his art in it. So I might do a video on that and sort of like do a ode to Akira Toriyama kind of thing, and flip through the pages and show a lot of the art from the different animes. And I mean, a lot of people, like, I don't know if you ever played Chrono Trigger as a kid, but like he did all the art for Chrono Trigger too. He did all the art for like Dragon Quest and stuff like that. So just super prolific as an artist, man. And I really like the way he
Yeah.
draws machinery and clothing. Like
Yeah.
something tells
Buildings.
me, yeah, something tells me that he is drippy in real life. Like something tells me he's
Mhm.
got some cool clothes, because he'll put Goku in some like fire 90s clothes. You know what
Mhm.
I'm saying? So like I can appreciate that, and I always like that about his art. All the promotional material, Goku's got like a dope outfit on. So yeah, rest in peace, man. Rest in peace.
Yeah, that one hit hard, man. I agree with you, and it sucks. You were mentioning I was actually eyeing a comic with his auto, and I let it slide for like $150 because it's one of those things, like you said, you add to the watch list, and you're like, yeah, I'll be there in a couple of days, and then you go back and it was gone. But another thing you touched on that was super cool, and a lot of people don't touch on this too much, but or even realize what's going on as far as like their time versus the investment in trying to get the great themselves. That's another thing a lot of people don't take into consideration, whether it's modern or anything that has condition rarity. I've never understood people that, for example, will buy like 10 cards raw and hope for the 10 when they could just go outright buy the 10. Stop like wasting your time and like, you know what I mean? Like, of course you're gonna make maybe some money back or some return back from if you hit 2 10s or something like that. But for the most part, if you're just gonna collect, just buy the 10 or buy the 9 if that's the top grade. You know?
100%. Like, and with this kind of stuff, like I'm not playing around. Like, I know how long it's gonna take me to find stuff like that in good condition and what I'm gonna have to pay for it, and then the chances of trying to get a 9, especially from PSA. I'm not gonna waste my time. Like, if it looks clean and it's already graded high and I feel it's priced fairly, I'm just gonna snap it. You know, it's
Yep.
not to say that like, oh, it's going to double in price in a year or whatever. But like, if it feels undervalued to me as somebody that sources and flips as a business, then I feel pretty confident in purchasing it. So stuff like that. I mean, yeah, man. I mean, there's other DBZ Cardos stuff that is a little more expensive than I'd like to pay that's listed on eBay. But if it comes down to the right price, I'll probably snap it too and just hold on to it, because even though like my main focus isn't collecting, I love this stuff. I know how difficult it is to get, and I want to have it over the long term. You know, like I plan on hopefully being here unless collectible markets see like some crazy recession. I plan on being here for a minute, you know.
Mhm.
So even when I'm older and maybe I'm not doing this as a business anymore, I want to have like those pieces to sort of like look back on and be like, you know, and still connect me with my childhood and also connect me to the time that I spent in all these card markets, right? Because this whole this whole thing has been a trip, man. You know what I'm
Yeah.
saying? Like it's crazy. You know, I was out of cards for pretty much my entire life, and then came back in when everything went crazy in 2020, and it's been a wild ride, but I've really enjoyed it. You know, so I definitely want to have some mementos for sure.
Yeah. Yeah, I agree, man. I see them like kind of like a little badge, you know, to like a little trophy of your for yourself of what you were able to accomplish in, you know, whether it was like the Pokemon market or a Marvel or DBZ or whatever it is. One of the last questions I have for you, man. So I'm gonna give you 3 cards, and I want to know which one you would buy,
All
right?
right, all right.
I'm not gonna mention the prices to you, right? And no looking up anything, but would you take a Gengar Masaki promo in a PSA 9? Okay. Or would you take a Deadpool 2017 Fleer Ultra Spider Man green PMG out of 10? Or on the DBC end, would you take a PSA 9 one of whoever your favorite character is from the limited 3000 set?
Oh, damn. The fact that you even know what the limited 3000 is crazy. That's I'm taking that all day. All day.
Okay.
100% I'm taking the limited 3000. Those are my great, like, especially the Goku and Vegeta one, because it's like they're side by, and it's the first time they fought each other, and I'm just like, oh man, like that is such an iconic scene. Those cards are so tough to get in good condition. If those came up for a decent price, I'm backing the truck up. I'm snapping those. I'm not letting those sit on the market, dude. I love those cards. That's crazy that you even know what those are, man. That's nuts.
You
But
know,
back to your point too about like memento. Like I don't know if you ever did this, but like I'm super into music, and as a kid, I wore a lot of like rapper tees and band tees and stuff like
mm,
that, and it was sort of like a form of self expression, right? It was like I really
mm,
like this artist, I really like this band. I'm gonna represent that by like wearing their merch, right? And so I
mm.
kind of feel the same way with cards a little bit too. It's like a self expression, like this. You know, this comic and this here. I'll see if I can actually pull the card down. But like this. The comic has the same art, but this card is like, so Akira Toriyama was actually a big fan of Formula One, and way back in the day, they did a Dragon Ball Z collab with McLaren's F1 team, because he was a huge F1 fan, and so you can see this is Goku and the whole crew dressed up in F1 gear, and that's the thing they do when they win the races. Like the people that get first, second, and third shake the champagne bottle and spray the crowd and all that stuff. And so like this to me is like a representation of things I
Yeah.
like. I got pretty heavy into Formula One. I was never really into racing or any of that sort of stuff. And then I watched like Drive to Survive on Netflix, got super into F1. And so just that cool part of his, another cool thing about that too is like, you know, people collect Marlboro stuff, that's got a lot of
Mm,
collectability around it, because
yeah.
cigarette manufacturers can't advertised the same way anymore. Whereas back in the day, they were doing like jackets and all sorts of stuff. And so having that like Marlboro and the F1 and
That's
Akira
crazy.
Toriyama, you know what I'm
Yeah.
saying? Like those multiple levels of collectability, like that kind of stuff to me, that's the kind of stuff that. And again, like I think I bought this card. Like this card won't grade probably above like an 8 or something, but that's why I just got it in the one touch. But I probably got that card for $15, but I'll never sell it. And to me, it means more than $15. You know what I mean?
Yeah.
So that kind of stuff is the stuff that I'm like, I'm not selling this. I like it. I really appreciate the art. And every time I look at it, it reminds me of all those multiple levels of connection. So
That's dope, man. That's like the equivalent of like a triple entendre. You know what I'm saying? Like when it has
yeah.
like 3 different meanings. I was gonna tell you too, man. We'll close out. If you could just share with us, you did already the Dragon Ball Z cards you had, but if you could show us some of your, however many you want. I don't want to put a number on it, but if you could show me some of your favorite Pokemon cards and some of your favorite Marvel cards that you currently have.
Okay, I don't have a lot of Marvel cards anymore. I think that's probably the only one that I really still have is the Deadpool. I sold off like everything into that Marvel boom, but here I got something crazy for you. Hold up.
All right.
All right, so this is real nerdy, but another one of my favorite artists. His name is Yoshitaka Amano, and he was responsible for all the like original Final Fantasy art, and so like, and I really like his art style, especially like the way that he draws like clothing and stuff like that. So these are kind of like vintage Final Fantasy trophy cards. Like this is like a tournament card and stuff like that. So if you ever played like the vintage Final Fantasy or seen the Super Nintendo box art,
that's crazy. Is that Michael Jackson? What's going on there?
No, that ain't Mike Jack. That ain't Mike Jack. But like this, I mean, this is just crazy to me. You know what I mean?
Yeah,
like
that's dope.
This is like where fine art meets TCG. So that stuff again, super niche. I put these up on eBay, and I think maybe like one person is watching them or even knows what they are. You know what I mean? But like that kind of stuff hits to me. I really like his art style, and so I would say that's probably like my favorite. I do have them listed, but I'm not tripping that they're not selling because again, like favorite artists, I love those arts, and very difficult to find those cards. So yeah,
that's dope, man. For sure. Yeah, and that's that's what you're supposed to do, man. Is like go again after things that resonate with you and that you appreciate, and that's where you're at. That's how you know you're ahead of the game. When you only got one watcher, you're a couple years too ahead, bro. They got to catch up. You let them catch up a little bit.
Yeah, I mean, probably like a year ago, I was talking to Melfi and a bunch of the dudes in Swami's Marvel Discord, and I wanted to jump back in and start buying some stuff, but I had been away for so long and stuff had changed that I felt like I was going to overpay on something. And one thing I noticed too was like auctions were going way lower than buy it now. And so it was like, okay, well, what if I pay what feels like a good price, buy it now, and then an auction happens like 2 weeks later and for like half the price, then I'm gonna feel like a dummy. You know what I mean?
No, you double up. What do you mean? That's when you double up.
Yeah.
Cost average. You bring down the cost average. What's going on? Come on, Retro. I thought you were about the numbers.
That's a good point. But I mean, there's a lot of stuff in Marvel I was looking at, and I was just like, man, like I would love to have this card. I love the art on it. It's super rare, but again, I was just worried because I didn't want to overpay. And so I would show cards to Melfi or Swami or whatever, and they'd be like, yeah, but if you waited and were patient and tried to catch it on an auction, then, you could probably get it for a good price. But the issue with that is like a lot of the cards I was interested in, there's maybe like one listed, right? Yep. And it's like, if I don't buy this one, it might never come up on auction. So that's the issue with the Marvel stuff. It's like, yeah, you want to be patient and not overpay, but if you don't snap the only copy available and somebody else buys it, like you might have to kiss that card goodbye for 5 years, So
yeah,
I don't know, man. Like that's the toss up, and you don't really have that issue in Pokemon, right? Like even some of the most rare high-end stuff, like you can get it back, like, and they transact more often. But with that marble stuff, like once it gets into a real collector's PC, it's good, you know, bye, good night. Like that stuff's gone forever, especially with like the low number stuff, the sketch cards. Like I've seen sketch cards I thought were so cool, and I've never seen them again, and probably will never see them again.
Yeah.
You know,
That's the thing.
and those are one-on-ones, you know, and like that to me, like sketch cards were always the thing that really stood out to me, because they're a true one-on-one, and like you get the card and you can see the indentations in the card from where the artist pushed down with the pen, and like something hits about that, you know.
Yeah.
So when those are gone, and they're, I mean, you're fully aware, but there's some sketch card whales out there that once they get their hands on stuff, like it's just, you're not going to ever see those cards again. So, you know.
Yeah, and especially the medium size, right? Like a small, like it's something to. It's obviously not that it's easy at any way, right? Like every art has its own thing, but it's, to me, it's a lot easier to draw like on a damn canvas than it is on a 3x5, you know, or even smaller, whatever the size is. But yeah, that's a good point, man. I do believe that, but again, it comes down to like the right art and the right artist, and there's even things even within the sketch hobby community, because that's its own niche too. Where is it pack pulled or is it not pack pulled, right? And then when you get into the recreation sketches, like cover recreations by like uh, Warren Martinick, excuse me. I didn't know this either, by the way, but there's cards he put that were famous covers. Like shout out to Doom, you know, he let me get off before he moved to the Secret Wars 10. That cover's dope. But I asked the artist, and he goes, "Yeah, if anybody ever wants another one, I'll redo it." So that's kind of whack, right? It stops making it a true one of one. The only thing that I have to hold over it is that mine was the first, and it was pack pulled, and it was in the set list, versus you just got a copy. You
Yeah,
know, so
yeah. And I think too that's probably why pack pulled sketches are probably always going to hold more value than secondary market sketches or artist proofs or whatever. Even though some of those artist proofs, especially on the blanks that people send in or whatever, like I think those are dope. But to your point, those can technically be recreated. Whereas the pack pulled, it is what it is. Like that's your only opportunity to get that card, and that provides like true value. And then in a lot of those sets too, like the sketches are the chase, you know, maybe not as much anymore, but like to certain people, I feel like the sketches still are the chase, right? So yeah, man, was always into that stuff. And it's the art for me, right? Like I think Melfi just posted some crazy like Batman sketch, and it's kind of like avant-garde and a little bit
yeah,
trippy looking. It's not like a traditional looking Batman, but like stuff like that is fire. And then that those sorts of pieces are what make up like a truly unique collection. It's not something that everybody else can get. It's not something that you see every day. It's not just like another Batman. It's a truly unique artist vision of, you know, what Batman might look like. And I don't know, like that stuff's just dope to me, rather than just like another numbered parallel in a different color. I mean, some of that stuff's cool too, don't get me wrong, but like the sketches are, that's where it's at for me.
yeah. Shout out to Mafia, yeah, and I think the artist you're referring to is McHaley. So that Batman, yeah, and Doom has a couple of those pieces too. It is a little different. It's kind of like Bill Sinkovich, but like with watercolors or something like that. You know, it's a little different take. But man, retrospects, man, thanks for joining me, man. This has been a long time coming. I kind of postponed the first one, as you know. I rescheduled a while back, and I've got, you know, going through a bunch of stuff, as you know, like I told you, being a father and having two kids. But other than that, man, I'm looking forward to having you back on, whether it's on your channel or, you know, on the NSDC podcast, or both. But yeah, man, any closing thoughts, or any, you know, if you want to plug in any of your eBay store, your YouTube channel, and anything you want to do, man.
Yeah, no, man, I appreciate you having me on. Like I said, I've been a fan for a minute, and you guys are really like my favorite card content to watch. Like I deal mainly in Pokemon for
Appreciate
sure, but
that.
like I get a little burnt out talking about
Yeah.
Pokemon over and over, and sort of having to stay up to date, like chopping it up about the niche stuff, and listening to you guys do the research on things I've never even seen before, and then you guys are putting up these crazy arts on screen. Like that's what really keeps me engaged and really keeps
Mm.
me like excited about the hobby, right? Like that's the kind of content that I want to consume. So I appreciate you having me on. I'd love to get you guys on for a live to really get into what you've been collecting. I know you guys are a little bit close to the chest sometimes about what you're buying and stuff, but yeah, man, I'd love to get you guys on and pick your brains and see what you've been getting into for sure. So, but yeah, if you want to find me on like Instagram, YouTube, it's Retrospecs, and then my store. I think you just type in Retrospecs Collectibles on eBay and it should pop up. So appreciate that.
Yeah, man. And for anybody that doesn't know, his icon is like a little Giovanni from Pokemon. So if you see Giovanni, you know it's Retrospecs. Otherwise, you know it's someone just trying to copy his name. But thanks for coming on, man. I appreciate you, man.
Yeah.
Other than that, guys, we'll see you guys next time.